Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through the major news and topics facing importers and manufacturers in China and Asia today. Hi again. Thanks for tuning into China Manufacturing Decoded. Adrian from the team here, and I'm joined by our CEO, Renaud. Renaud, hi again.
Hey there, and hi everybody. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. Better weather here in Europe, finally. I think we've gotten through the winter, mainly unscathed. How about at your end?
Actually starting to be a little bit hot in South China. This is a bit scary because, the bad season is coming up on us.
Yes, definitely hot. And, by hot, you're talking like mid to high 30s, right?
Not yet, but it's getting there and a bit humid, so not so easy to breathe.
I know it well. Okay, so in this episode, we're turning back to a series of episodes we've been doing on sourcing from China, specifically doing your own sourcing from China. This is actually part 7. And so far, we've been exploring, finding suppliers for your own products, getting them manufactured, improving your cooperation with your manufacturer now you found them. We've been talking more recently about softer skills. So that's things like building rapport with your supplier, how to follow up on production. That was quite recent, whether you're going to be hands-on or hands-off. Mm-hmm. And so now we're at the point where we're working with a supplier who's doing our manufacturing, and that's in process. So the question today is, Renaud, how do we develop these suppliers to perform better over time? What does, better performance mean even? So really, we're talking about implementing some sort of development program. So that's what we're talking about today, how to develop your Chinese suppliers. So the first question is this something which is actually sometimes overlooked by buyers?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people buy from China and they think they're going to find a supplier, hopefully everything goes right. And they're very, afraid of any kinds of issues, manufacturing quality issues, products that are developed but that are not reliable, undisclosed changes of materials or changes of processes, long delays and so on. They're really afraid. They want to protect their downside, but they usually don't look at actually getting their suppliers to be better at what they're doing, right? And as you mentioned, first, what does it mean to develop a supplier? What does their performance mean? Well, if you outsource manufacturing to, let's say, to China or to Vietnam or to India or a country like this, and they manufacture the product for you, and then they either ship it to you or ship it directly to your customers or your distributors and so on. What actually matters to you? Well, you want the products to be at the right quality, and you want the shipment to be done on time, or at least not consistently and very late. You want prices to be moderate, and you don't want them to escalate very quickly for no reason. And you want at least, a certain level of service. If you develop new products for them, you want them to have the capability to actually do the technical work and so on and so forth of developing new products. All of this can be summarized in 3 or 4 KPIs often, and that's the performance. It could be, average percentage of quality defects. It could be percentage of shipments that are shipped on time and things like that. So that's supplier performance. Now, if you are not very happy about a certain supplier, you sometimes it makes sense to try to invest some time and some resources and challenge this supplier and try to develop them. But sometimes it's not worth it, and you're just going to waste your time. We're going to cover that, but that's a very, very important decision to make before you actually start to work on developing a supplier. But yeah, basically developing a supplier means developing a supplier's, capabilities and systems and, improving their processes so that their performance, as I mentioned, improves.
And it kind of sounds crazy that, you mentioned a lot of companies who are outsourcing production to China or other Asian countries. They don't actually consider developing suppliers, because if you've only been listening to this series of podcasts that we've been doing alone about sourcing from China, it's quite an investment of your time and effort to get to the point where you found a supplier. So if they are able to improve, it almost sounds like mad not to try, right?
Well, yes, it's like having a key employee and not investing any training in that employee, not sending that employee to some conferences to broaden their vision about what's possible. And I've seen a lot of companies think like a really bad boss. The really bad boss would say, well, if we train the employee and the employee maybe even gets some certifications and the employee travels to some conferences and meet some other people in the same industry, maybe they will find out that they don't have a very good deal with us. Maybe they're going to get a better offer and they're going to quit. But this is really, this is very myopic usually, because the new employee, when she comes back, can do so much more and actually share some of these ideas with the rest of the team and get the whole team better, right? And I've seen a lot of purchasers do exactly that with their key suppliers. Well, if we push them to get such and such certification, such and such, better production equipment, such and such better systems, well, they will be more attractive to other customers, and they're gonna notice it, and they're gonna be maybe not so nice with us, and they're gonna end up dropping us, or they're gonna have us pay for it, directly or indirectly. Costs will be higher because we will be in less favorable negotiating position. Well, I'll leave everybody to imagine all the consequences of that in the long run. I think it's very detrimental to the importer's performance. But anyway, it's their business to do what they want. Here, rather than explaining why, as a buyer, you should try to develop your suppliers, let's try to look into, what it includes.
Yeah.
And the first thing is really, when you do the sourcing for your suppliers, you already need to have that in mind. First, you need to make sure you select suppliers with the right profile that are a good fit for your company and for whom your company is a good fit, right? And when you find that, maybe the supplier, maybe their processes are not great and their capabilities are not great, and maybe they're a bit small and they still have a lot to learn, but in the long run, they're going to want to please you. They're going to want to stick with you, and vice versa, right? And this is much more promising. So selecting suppliers with the right profile is really the very first thing that you need to keep in mind. And there's certain, leadership behaviors, let's say, that can be observed in a factory that really wants to improve. Because if you select a supplier that's, very focused on the day-to-day and just putting out the fires in their operations and, just like getting on and surviving another day, you can push them all you want. They would not see past the horizon of maybe the end of the month. So they will never really invest a lot of resources into developing their capabilities and improving their processes and so on. Right. So you need to look for companies where management is sort of looking forward, right? And for example, what do they do with their profits? Are they draining all the cash out of the operations to buy real estate in the name of maybe the kids of the owner? And there's a lot of that in China, right? But this is really not good. Now, if you go in and they see, well, we've been investing in this, maybe this lab equipment and also this production machinery. Okay, they do invest. They keep again looking forward, right? They work to make sure that tomorrow is a better day than today, and than yesterday. Are they trying to maybe learn how to make new product categories, maybe how to master new technologies? Are they hiring some engineers to work on new product development? Do they hire some professional managers rather than hiring maybe, first the boss hires the wife and then hires the cousin and the brother-in-law and so on and so forth. And then when the whole family is in the business, then they hire extended family members and some other people from the hometown, but nothing is professional and everybody's just working hard at what they're doing, also probably working hard to get some cash out of the operation into their personal accounts, because from what we've seen, nobody will steal as much from your company as your brother-in-law in China. So this is really not good. This is really, family managed businesses are wow, that's a red flag in most cases, right? But if they try to hire people who've been working in other companies, in bigger companies, have set up some systems in other companies, well, you can see that they will tend to improve over time, whether you push them, whether you help them or not, right? And second thing is, when you want them to start making a new product, typically maybe either your designers come up with some ideas, or maybe you have your existing products and you want to transfer these productions to them. Do you just send them the designs and say, okay, guys, try to do what you can, or do you actually do your homework? Because if the buyer does some of the technical work and has some of the technical expertise and passes that on to the supplier, well, obviously everybody's going to gain. So first, what is the quality standard? This is the basic of the basics, but it's good to repeat it. If they do not know your quality standard, if they do not know what you can accept or cannot accept, they're not going to put a lot of effort into training their staff to actually to know what is acceptable to you. Okay. And then if you've been working with one or two other factories making the same product for you and you transfer that production over to them, can you help them, with some of the lessons learned? And based on maybe there's 5 or 10 serious issues that happen on that same kind of product, and a lot of lessons learned. Do you actually help the new supplier be aware of them and set up maybe an FMEA or some other risk assessment based on that, and help them set up the right controls, right? And do you help them set up the testing stations? Do you help them nail how to control a certain process? All of that is really important, and so it's definitely going to help you avoid very expensive quality problems. And usually when there are quality problems, it leads to shipment delays, and it leads to also the manufacturer or maybe their own key suppliers, the suppliers of the components or the materials, to say, "Ooh, this is in China they call it mafan, but very pain in the neck. This is a pain in the neck kind of customer. They reject a lot of things. Quality standard is high. I'm not going to put my work into question and try to improve the way I do the work to improve the pass rate. No, I'm just going to count how much rework I have to do, how much scrap, and I'm just going to bump the price up." Which is which is very easy to do, and which is tempting, unfortunately, and you want to avoid that. So that's the first two blocks. First, are you working with the right kind of people?
Yeah.
And number two is when you transfer new productions to them, do you actually help them get it right? Because if you help them and they see that you make things easier for them and less confusing and ultimately better quality means also a better margin for them. Everybody's winning. So you already this way you're scoring points, and they see that you are a good buyer. And if they see that you invest some attention to that, maybe some engineering time to help them at this stage, they see that you are not going to switch to another supplier just to save a few pennies. And then that's where they can, in turn, invest more resources into making sure everything runs fine. And that's really what you want, right? So that's the two very basic blocks, I would say.
Yeah, help them to help you. I mean, it makes so much sense listening to it. And it's kind of connected with the past couple of episodes that we did in this series, which is being a hands-on buyer or not, and also building a rapport. And that point particularly is connected there, isn't it?
Oh, it's exactly the same thing, actually. It's exactly the same thing. What I just said is, yes, you want to be a hands-on buyer. You want to be involved in making sure that things go well. And yes, you want to build good rapport, because if they hate you, if they hate your guts, they're not going to work hard to make you happy.
Right.
This is not going to happen.
No, of course.
So, and it's the same in every culture, but maybe in China it's even worse. Once they really hate you, I mean, they can't even. They're too emotional about it. They will not even read your emails or respond, right? Whereas maybe some people, let's say in India, are better, emotionally mature and can just take a distance from that and will say, okay, let's just pass this account to another salesperson or something, and then it's fine, But be careful. If they hate you, that's it. Usually, it's the end of the road.
Indeed.
So once you've done that, what are the next steps? As I mentioned, you need to make sure your quality standard is clear. And I would say the next step is to give them some feedback over time. And if you give them some feedback and a little bit of homework, let's say, over time, if they pay attention and you also pay attention, they can only improve, right? As long as the intentions are good, they can only improve. Because, you set the quality standard and then you do inspections and then you give them feedback and you get the goods and you look at them and you get maybe also feedback from your market, from your own customers. If you spend the time to organize that in maybe in spreadsheets with some photos and say, okay, these are the 10 most common quality issues that we see, and you feed all of that back to the manufacturer. Now they have something to work on, but then you need to sort of tell them, okay, what is the next step? Okay, this is the number one issue here. It's recurring. and it's hurting us financially. So, corrective action plan or 8D, right? Do something about that. You have to do a root cause analysis, and you have to get all the way to, fix the problem at the root, or the roots. Sometimes there's more than one root cause. And you need to keep monitoring the effects of the changes, because sometimes make a change and it has some other effects that might be even worse. And once the effectiveness of the changes are confirmed, and everything is documented and everybody knows that this is a new way of doing things, well, usually the same problem will not come back, at least not in the same way, right? And you go through that cycle a sufficient number of times, wow, because that's how production works. You're going to have some issues, but you work through the issues one by one, and you keep working at it. And the biggest issue first, always, and you do the hard work, and over time, the same issue is much less likely to happen, and you do 10, 20 cycles of that, and the defect rate should be much lower, right? Now it sounds kind of simple, right? But a lot of suppliers are just not capable of doing a proper root cause analysis, and that's sort of infuriating to a lot of buyers. But maybe you need to provide them some training. Maybe you need to send them to some classes about that. I mean, it's such a widespread industry problem. There's a lot of ways to train people to do proper root cause analysis and proper addressing the issues with the proper countermeasures and following up properly over time and making sure all is documented and retraining the people, all the whole corrective action thing, right? From a proper problem statement, what exactly is the problem, then what are the symptoms, then what are the the points of cause, and then what kind of root causes do we see, and then for each root cause, going through what I mentioned before. A lot of people are in quality departments but have never done that properly, which is sort of amazing. But if you work with a low-cost Asian supplier, and they are not very structured and very professional, you kind of have to expect that. So you need to help them do it. You need to give them feedback. You need to give them pressure. Make sure they do it. You might have to reinvoice some of that to them, some of the cost to them, so they take it seriously. You might have to, or maybe you reinvoice it to them the second time. Maybe if it's a recurring big issue that you flagged as a big issue, then maybe the second time you reinvoice it to them in full. So they take it very seriously that they have to do a proper root cause analysis and proper countermeasures and so on, right? And this way you involve the managers, not just maybe the quality manager, because very often quality manager is just someone who can speak English and use the right lingo to impress the customers, and just do inspections, and they don't really do anything in depth. But you want to involve a much broader range of people in the factory, including production staff, obviously, sometimes design and R&D staff, sometimes purchasing staff and their own suppliers, and so on and so forth. So the way I see that is, is a PDCA, right, or PDSA, more and more they call it like this: plan, do, study, and adjust. Right, and these are cycles. You plan. You take some time to plan. You see the root cause analysis. You collect data and so on. You see the trends. Then you do some countermeasures, and you study to see the effect of that, and then you adjust as necessary, and you document and everything, and then you go into that again and again and again as cycles. So I see that as cycles, and if it does happen as cycles and it's done properly, it's really continual improvement. Maybe not continuous, because continuous improvement means they would do it like every day. But if they do cycles, from time to time, but they really don't stop doing it and they do it well, it's continual improvement, which is an ISO 9001 kind of term, but it is, it is really paints the picture accurately. That's what it means. If they do enough cycles of that, I mean, their processes have to get better, right? And then now, what if they don't do anything like that? Again, it comes back to step number one. Are you working with the right people, right? And that's where if you see, no, we're not working with the right people, maybe they're way too big for us and they really don't care about our business. Maybe we're too cheap for them. Maybe whatever, they're going in with a strategy that takes them in another market or whatever. They kind of look down on us. They don't see us as a long-term customer. Okay, then maybe you're not treating them the right way, but probably you need to source a new supplier, and at least you need to bang on the table and make sure they know that you're not happy and you're considering to switch away, right? So that point here was to give them feedback and push them to improve based on that feedback. So it's very reactive. You wait for the issues and then you push the supplier to do something about that, and you might help them, you might guide them a little bit. You might say, no, this, firing that operator, no, that's not a root cause. I'm sorry. This is, why did the operator in the first place do it wrong, So you can guide them and so on, but it's still very reactive. Now, the next one or 2 points that I want to make here is that if you're very serious about developing a supplier and you see that the reactive approach maybe doesn't go fast enough or doesn't go deep enough, or maybe it's only about the quality issues, but you have some other issues with them. Maybe it's a capacity issue, maybe it's a cost issue, maybe it's very long lead times. Then you need to take a more proactive approach, right? And I would cut that into 2 separate approaches. One of them is, go for the low-hanging fruits, go for some small projects that will lead to some measurable improvement. And the second approach is, go for deeper changes in the organization that will lead to deeper improvements in performance. Now, again, how much weight do you have on the factory? If you're buying 60% of their output and you represent probably, maybe 90% of their profits, and if you keep growing and they see you as the future of the company and so on, you can push them around and you can say, hey guys, okay, we're bringing in some industrial engineers here, maybe some consultants, and they're going to tell you what to change, right? They're going to make a diagnostic about the problem and they're going to tell you what to do, and you're going to have to work through it, right? Then who pays it is always a discussion, but maybe it's 50-50, 50% the buyer, 50% the supplier. But if you have a lot of weight over the supplier, great, go and do that, and go and get maybe some consultants involved, and then maybe the consultants will say, well, the main issue maybe is the absence of a production planning system, and all the supply chain management. They tend to purchase very large batches. They don't plan properly. They keep too much stuff in the warehouse. They don't even look at aging inventory that goes obsolete and so on. Maybe it's supply chain issues. Maybe the consultants will say, well, a cost issue, and they look at it and they say, well, it's totally an efficient, a labor efficiency issue. They're working in a way that means that they have maybe 2 times more people than they should working on certain operations, and then they have to re-engineer the manufacturing processes, etc., right? That's if you have a lot of weight over them, or maybe the supplier themselves, they're asking for help, but if they don't see themselves in a crisis situation, it might be difficult. Now, again, it depends. It always comes back to point number one. Are you working with the right people? If they want to soak up, on any learning and try things, and maybe they're very interested, and you find a way to bring them to a really nicely managed, nicely organized factory, even if it's in a different vertical, making totally different kinds of products. Maybe they can observe certain things and come back and say, no, look, it works like this over there, and it's so much better, so much faster, and so on. If you work with that kind of people, great. And as I said, with a lot of manufacturers, it's just not something that will happen on its own. Either there's a very big crisis situation, or or nothing's going to move, right? Mm-hmm. And I should also mention that if your purchasing department keeps squeezing them for, to cut the cost, and it's very, very adversarial, then they'll be afraid of doing things under your leadership and, under your guidance. Because when you say, okay, guys, now we just help you remove the need for 20 people on the lines, and, at whatever, 5,500 RMB per person, that's X RMB that you saved for the next 5 years. And that's a lot of money. Well, then your purchasing department is gonna jump on it and say, okay, give us the cut on the prices right away. Then what's in it for the supplier? Next time you ask them to do something, they're gonna be like, yeah, it's not that simple. Okay, but wait, we're hiring a new director of operations. We can't do that without. You have to wait. Yeah, you have to wait because right? They're not going to do anything because, again, what's in it for them, right? So in a lot of cases, you have to start with something small and tell them, if you just change that, that would be the impact. You would save costs, and there will be fewer quality issues and right? And maybe it's maybe they have to invest in a new piece of equipment, but hopefully you can just point them in a direction that doesn't require heavy investment. Because very often they're going to say, oh, okay, then help, give us some ideas on how to automate. Okay, well, automation is expensive, and unless you buy relatively large volumes of just a few SKUs, it's not really going to have a big impact. Now, there's a lot of ways to do small projects, but really you need to have a very clear idea about their main issues. Let's say do a gap analysis on their operations and say, hey, this and this are big issues, and I would start with that one because it can be fixed relatively fast. It's got a relatively high chance of being successful. It's not going to take much investment or no investment at all. And, so when you do a cost and benefit analysis, that's and risk analysis, that's number one. Let's start with that, right? And you sort of document the before and after. So, I don't know. For example, a few years ago, I remember we worked with a manufacturer of ceramic products. I can't really be very specific here. I think it was in Chaozhou, in South China. And no, sorry, it was close to Fuzhou. And they had very inconsistent quality. And the way it's done, if they do a mix of several materials, and then they shape it, and then it goes into a kind of oven, and it comes out, and it's maybe there's some paint applied on the outside. So, and they had some issues about some dots and some marks coming out after the oven, and they were like, yeah, it's normal, it's blah blah blah. on this kind of product, it's not going to be 100% good. It's always like that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, wait a minute, guys. Let's do an experiment, because it was pretty obviously not true. So what we did is we studied the products once they were shaped, but before they went into the oven, and we classified certain defects. There were already dots and marks and things like that, but we had no idea what it looked like after it goes into the oven. So we took something like 20 or 30 samples, not processed in the oven yet, and that had some kind of little defect, little imperfection, and we circled the imperfections. We wrote, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. We took photos of them. We told them, okay, now do a batch with it, put it in the oven, and after that, let's look at it. The next day we come back, we look at the samples, number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. And then it was very easy to say, okay, when it's this kind of defect, this kind of imperfection, it will be a defect after the oven process. But when it's like that, it's okay, it's not visible. So already their inspection station before the oven could remove the samples and just throw them back into the mixing. So of course it has to be reprocessed, but it's not completely lost. The material is immediately and fully recycled. Now it's not great yet, right? The next step is to go back into the upstream process step and say, okay, what is causing those imperfections? Because these ones are the ones that will have to be scrapped. And if they are missed in inspection, it means the entire product has to be scrapped. And once it's been in the oven, it's I don't know, they were disposing of it somewhere at the back of in the backyard, and then they had the truck from time to time take it, and I think they were taking it to landfill. It was completely wasted. And then you do some work on the machinery that's shaping the products, and you try to find patterns. What is leading to those kinds of imperfections, right? But you can do it step by step, and the first step, it just takes a couple of days to set up a standard, and you put them like a library of defects. You make a wall of defects like a file cabinet, and you put an inspection station, and right away you can allow them to save a lot of money because they catch the imperfections before they become defects, right? That's the first step, very fast. Again, in a couple of days, you show them how to reduce their costs quite substantially because they really had a lot of defects. So it's as if you do that, it's what we call a low-hanging fruit. It's not that difficult to do. It's fast. You can document before and after, and you can show them how much they are benefiting from it, right? And then you see if they're ready to have some more input from you, right? And you take it step by step like that. But everybody benefits, really, right? You benefit as the buyer, and they benefit because their costs are lower. So
absolutely,
these are some general ideas, let's say, right? Pick the right people to work with. Make sure they understand the quality standard. Teach them a few tricks when they start making your product, and it means the buyer has to do some work. Give them some feedback. Request some corrective actions. And then actually be involved in working with them on improving their processes and their systems. And it might make sense to start on a very small scale, and sometimes it requires 6 to 12 months of hard work, reorganizing their manufacturing processes, or maybe reorganizing their supply chain processes, or maybe both, right? That's supplier development. How to make it possible, before you actually think of how to develop the supplier. That's what a lot of people are missing. But in most cases, you can't really count on your supplier to work by themselves without any input from you and to improve their systems and processes on their own, unfortunately.
Right.
So you really need to kick them a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they need to be afraid of completely losing your business. And sometimes it's enough to get them moving. But in some other cases, what you need is some support and a little bit of pushing, and it's enough to get them to spend a lot of resources. So you need to know your key suppliers, right?
Yeah. So that's basically the anatomy of a supplier development program. And I know it sounds like a lot of work. I love it when we get you talking on topics like this, because you just can give so much really detailed and helpful info. And I know it sounds like a lot of work, but if you compare that to ditching a supplier and then going out and starting the sourcing process from scratch again, and then building up to working with a new supplier and all of the risk involved in that as well, actually this does make a lot of sense.
Yes. Yeah, the new one might be worse. So you definitely want to identify, when supplier development makes sense and is possible, and then give it a try, give it a good try, because the alternative is going to be, high cost and late deliveries and poor quality and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and also just to make the point as well. This is such an important goal for manufacturing in China or Asia, and it's actually connected to why we even set up our own contract manufacturing subsidiary as well, Agilian Technology, to actually embody this kind of behavior that you don't always get from other Chinese suppliers. Yes,
in some cases it's been so frustrating to some of our clients. Try to get things going with such and such supplier, and then we helped them move to another one that was better, and they started to really to have behavior issues and information retention issues and so on, and then you move them to another one, and the same process happens again, and at some point you want to take things in your hand. So I know a number of buyers who are thinking, hey, our volumes might be big enough, we might want to set up our own factory. It makes a lot of sense, right? Or look for a Western-owned contract manufacturing facility, because some of them, at least, for sure, do embody, continual improvement. They have the right attitude, and they really want to get better over time, right? Because at a certain level, it becomes a cultural issue. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I will leave the link to Agilian in the show notes if you want to go and have a look at what we're doing over there as well. Next episode in this series, we're sort of keeping on down this path, and we're going to be discussing how to obtain impressive results in quality improvement and cost reduction from suppliers. So very much a continuation of this kind of topic. That'll be a good one, I think, and that's coming in May 2022, so in the next several weeks. And I think that's a good place to draw a close to this. But Renaud, thanks for going into such detail. Really, really great to learn about how to put in place a supplier development program and what it all entails. Really good stuff.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I hope it's helpful.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.